I want to know, does anybody have any major takeaways from Brittany's? TOTS is big, okay? And you're gonna come across a lot of people that are gonna disagree with you in that world, okay? They're all professional within the medical profession. I see neurodevelopmental kids, okay? Autism, OCD, anxiety, depression, ADHD, all that kind of common stuff. And TOTS plays a massive role in that. Massive, massive role. I would say 95% of kids who have that diagnosis most likely have TOTS. Okay, some form, some shape. What you learned from Brittany, any idea of probably the largest impact you would see with kids with neurodevelopmental stuff? Any ideas on that? I don't know if she touched on it because it's not one of the things she's always looking for.
Sympathetic and parasympathetic.
That's a good one. Very good. Airway. Plays a massive role in airway. The nervous system needs what? Glucose, air, and stimulation. If you're missing a third, it's going to play a massive role. And it's going to impact how they actually respond to care. Okay? So, do kids with neurodevelopmental disorders get better under chiropractic care? Yes! If they don't, you have to figure out why. It's usually one of those three. So, let's jump into this. All right, like I mentioned, I had food poisoning, so I am not 100%. Well, let's jump into this. All right. I want you to look at every individual as a nervous system, okay? That's how you should view all your future patients, right? How do they interpret, perceive, and understand the world, okay? So in reality, what is a subluxation? It's an alteration in the perception of your reality, okay? It alters it. It can control, it impacts sympathetics. It can impact, just proprioception. These are all very important things. And kids with neurodevelopmental stuff always have some form of alteration in their perceived world, okay? For instance, once you get your hands on a 6 or 7-year-old, you're gonna touch their neck and they're gonna go, ow! And they'll scream right in your face. The parents are gonna look at you like, I did not hurt them. But in reality, their brain perceives pain. It can be a gentle touch, but their brain perceives pain. So their perception is altered because of this, okay? So this is very, very important. So you're gonna start looking at people and how they interpret the world, okay? Once you kind of understand whole brain function, you're gonna start seeing people, you're gonna start understanding these diagnoses and what it actually means to people, okay? So, all right. Everybody know how the brain develops? Bottom to top, okay? So we start in the brainstem, right? What's in the brainstem? Autonomics and primitive reflexes. If you have primitive reflexes, you automatically have autonomic dysfunction. There's no questions, ifs, ands, or buts. You will automatically have that, okay? What's one of the easiest ways, adults should probably answer one of this because I know I've told them, so if they don't answer, I'm going to be displeased. What is one of the easiest ways to look for autonomic dysfunction? Good one, I like that sound. But there's an even easier way. Look at the eyes. Pupil dilation, constriction. Think about that. You're a kiddo, you have primitive, you're 5, 6, 7, right? Your primitive reflexes, your autonomic nervous system does not function appropriately. You're sensitive to sound, you're sensitive to light. Go into a classroom. Your ability to perceive the environment, what the teacher's saying, and hone in is all altered. Okay, so you're gonna start seeing these kids, you're gonna start talking to them and having conversations with them and looking at them as a nervous system, right? And how are they perceiving their world? Does sound trigger them? Does touch trigger them? Does light trigger them? So you have a kiddo who's 7 and has ADHD. What's one thing I do, maybe in the office, to prep for them so I don't overstimulate their nervous system? Turn the lights off. I rarely have my lights on. I'll tell you this, when you have a kiddo, because I don't know how you all are going to adjust, okay? You're going to start with them, when they start kiddo, you're going to start face up. Why?
So they can see.
So they can see. their autonomics are in disarray. One of the ways you understand, one of the most important ways you understand your environment is through sight. You're going to take that away from them and then touch them. Woo! They're going to kick you, bite you, punch you, start screaming. I don't know what they may do. Or they're just going to lock up. And you're going to lose rapport with them. So start thinking about what you know about how you perceive the environment, auditory, visual, touch, sound, taste, all that stuff. I generally do not play music in my room either. Okay? I don't want my kids coming into my office. There's lights obviously in the waiting room. They're coming into my room, there's music playing, and there's bright lights. Yee! Give them a little bit of speed, why don't you? Okay? So, every kid with a neurodevelopmental disorder has primitive reflexes. Across the board. Okay? Brittany went over some of those with you, right? And I'll go over some of those and I'll go over my exam with you, but that's very important. Back to front, medial to lateral, right to left, okay? So, a kiddo, I have a good friend of mine who's a chiropractor up in northern Frisco, sent his kid to me, and his right brain did not develop. Very smart kid. Anybody know the difference between right and left hemispheres? Is that okay? Yeah. So ADHD kiddos have a problem with right or left? Right. Prefrontal cortex. Yeah. Prefrontal medial cortex. Okay. And that's very tied to dopamine. Okay. That's why they like their sweets, right? Get the sweets, get the dopamine kick. Here's a fun little one. True ADHD, if you give them treats, something sweet. They won't crash. They'll start becoming hyper focused. You're flooding the area of the brain that's deficient in dopamine. Okay. If they're not true ADHD, they actually get hyper. So my kids will start, doing what they were doing outside of me, which is wrestling and playing around. But kids with ADHD, they'll start focusing in on stuff. Okay. So, but his son comes in. And he has a conversation with me before, right? We're good friends. And, one of the things he tells me is that the uvula is cranked. Right? I mean, I look at that mouth, I was like, holy shit. I mean, it is like there's a 100-mile-an-hour wind just blowing that sucker. It was crazy. Okay? But it was, and which side do you think it was to? So it's left strong, right? So he was right weak, so it goes to the left. So, but he's very typical, what we call autism, okay? Very smart, very good with numbers. He would be a high-functioning autism, okay? But you can just start looking at talking to somebody and figuring out imbalances and how their nervous system perceives it. He has very, very little ability to adapt, okay? Very, very little, like none, okay? And acts out quite frequently, okay? So start talking to them, start looking at them, start understanding them. Here's the key, when you go into your exams now, I want you to look at their faces. Start looking at your classmates' faces. What should we see? Symmetry. You see an eyelid, and then droop it on one side. They're not gonna smile evenly, they're gonna droop on one side or not be fully. When they smile, you're going to have a dimple on one side and on the other side. That could be a tie. Okay? You're going to start looking at people. The face is telling you a lot. That's the brainstem, right? That's where all the cranial nerves are coming out of. This is telling you a lot. So start looking at people. You're going to start understanding a lot about them if you just look at their face. How do they smile? Do they tilt their head to the side? All sorts of little different things are going to start giving you cues. Okay? That's going to make you understand them. That's going to help you with your exam. It's going to help you with communication because you're going to have a better understanding of that individual before they come in. Okay? I'm not going to go too far into this right now, but top-down control. That's prefrontal cortex, right? If you don't have that, your life is kind of in disarray. People who use a lot of uppers or downers don't have this, right? That's why they utilize that stuff. Okay. All right, so Primitive reflexes, gross motor, fine motor, ocular motor, okay? That's the way you develop. If you have primitive reflexes, you have altered gross motor. If you have altered gross motor, you have altered fine motor. If you have altered fine motor, eyes are the ultimate fine motor. That's altered, okay? Start looking at their eyes. When I went to school, you know, I was never taught it this way, so you do the little age thing. Oh, okay, they don't like track. Well, now you start looking, okay? Can they hold it? Can they actually track? They track better one side more than the other. I have kids that cannot see anything down in this lower right quadrant. Okay, so you're up here, looks good, looks good, looks good. Get down here, and they start doing this. They start blinking, start resetting their brain. They start looking left and going back down there. Okay, that's telling you something. When I was taught in school, that's fine, right? You know, that's completely normal. No, when they get to a spot where their nervous system gets stressed, they divert. So start looking at that stuff. One of the most important things when you go through your exams is to actually stress your patient, okay? Stress their nervous system, okay? You will find people, you're gonna see some adults, 35, whatever, ADHD, they may have some control there, but once you start stressing them, I do primitives on all my adults, by the way, okay? So I check primitive reflexes, okay? Don't assume that they don't have it in their 35. That's silly, okay? You start stressing them a little bit. You have them march in place. You start ramping up their nervous system, they start falling apart. Okay, some people look okay on the surface. If you do a quick, you know, oh, that looked really good. You spent 5 seconds doing that. No, hold it up here. They start blinking. It's telling me something. Come down here. They look away. That's telling me something, okay? Their brain is resetting and trying to figure this all out, okay? I'm telling you, you're gonna pick up a lot of cues. You're looking now, you're a soft neurological detective. At school, they teach you all hard, okay? Throw that out the window. You're not gonna have a lot of hard neurological cases coming in with neurodevelopmental stuff. You will, don't get me wrong. You're gonna have a lot of soft. And what I mean by that is the neurologists that they've seen, the pediatrician that they've seen, are not looking for any of this. Because it's not hard neurology, okay? So you can start looking for soft stuff. Look for deflections. Everybody know what a deflection is? It's just looking away. It's just, the stimulus is too much, I have to divert for a moment, okay? We all do it at some point. Start paying attention to yours, okay? I'll try to find somebody here that's gonna do something here. I already found one, but I'm not gonna pick on the individual, but they've already started deflecting. You're all gonna start deflecting, okay? Figure out what that is. A lot of times just move it. Start tapping your leg, okay? So start looking for soft signs. You're a detective now, okay? You're detecting soft neurological stuff. All right, primitive reflex that I look for Moro, STNR, ATNR, Babinski, Ruding, Palmer. There's a few other ones that I'll look at, but those are my primaries. Okay? Those are big ones. Gross motor movement. You know, you'll get some athletes that come in and they are very good in linear scenarios. They know how to do something because they've done it over and over again. But you put them in an uncertain scenario, they start falling apart. You get an athlete, you can have an amazing, really elite athlete, and you start having them stand on balance boards or do something else, they start falling apart. Really easy. Are you athletic? Yeah, I got this, bro. No, you don't, okay? These are the guys that are athletes that start getting injured really quickly, okay? So the reason I'm telling you this is because, look, their history doesn't look like maybe they have primitive reflexes. They're very athletic, right? They can catch a ball, they're great at shooting basketball, whatever that may be. But once you put them under some stress, something that they haven't repeated tens of thousands of times, they start falling apart real quick. Okay? When you say falling apart, do you mean like they just can't do it, or do they start like mentally getting really stressed and like uncomfortable in their environment? Together. You see a switch in mood. That's one of the big ones. Start getting a little angry. Why the fuck can I do this? Okay? It'll change real quick. But you can also test them too. You have them do something, look at their eyes. They blow out, they constrict. What are they doing? What are the sympathetics doing under that scenario? So start looking at people and the way they respond to stuff, okay? That's very, very important. How you respond is crucial. All right, fine motor. All right, anybody, let's see. Everybody write like this, or does anybody write like this, or like this? Oh, we're about to find somebody. No, I'm just kidding. You do.
No, I was gonna ask a question.
Yeah.
Gross motor, do you test like a squat? Or
Yeah, okay, so good question. I think I have those on later slides, but you know, one of the big things I'll ask them to do jumping jacks. Oh, that's so much fun. Okay. Can you actually do a jumping jack? You will be shocked. Like only one hand will come up, or their legs don't move, or their legs only move, but their arms don't move. I mean, you're just like, oh my God, how do you not know how to do this? But they don't. They cannot coordinate that thought. So I have to do squats. They start buckling in, or going to the side, or their feet start splaying in. All sorts of, any kind of gross movement you can take it to. I mean, that's what gait is, right? That's a gross motor movement. You can watch gait. Watch, you know, that's all the stuff you can do. I think I have that in some later slides. That's great. I have people write sometimes for me. I watch how they write.
And is that still considered gross motor, or is
That's
that
fine
still
motor.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm moving on to fine motor. Because they'll tilt their head to the side. What's that telling me? Who does that? Anybody do that?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Definitely have some upper cervical subluxations here. All right, why do you tilt your head to the side? Feels better? Okay, feels better, okay.
I feel like I can sign paper better.
Okay, that's good. That's telling you how you perceive your world. A lot of times kids, because they have a very, they will always usually close an eye if they're very eye sensitive, okay? So what they're doing is they're closing off one eye without closing it. So you're perceiving it through your world through a more narrow, controlled scenario. That's what a deflection is, right? You're controlling your environment somehow. If you start doing this, you're probably neurologically stressed. You don't do it wrong. Okay? And then ocular motor. I'm telling you, start watching your patient's eyes. It will tell you a lot. But, I mean, you perceive at the very base of our nervous system, we're perceiving our world through our brainstem, okay? What do you think the number one reason parents bring their ADHD kiddos in for?
They can't sit still. They keep getting in trouble. They can't focus in school.
Academic sometimes is the problem.
Social.
Social sometimes is the problem. Okay, if you have primitive reflexes, then you have no emotional regulation. Or very, very minimal. Most parents, if you actually deep dive into the consult, you know, we should talk about that in a minute, but if you dive into the consult, it's emotional regulation. They're yelling at me, they're biting me, they're punching their sister, whatever they're doing, they have very minimal control over their emotional regulation. You know, one of the girl that got me started in this, she was 4. She's kicked out of her 3rd preschool in less than a year. And the last one, she had pushed a kid off of the jungle gym and broke their clavicle. Oh. Yeah, it doesn't look good. No emotional regulation. Kid came and talked to her, she didn't like it. Oh! Push him up. I told you a lot, didn't it? Okay? Coming talking to you, you have to converge your eyes. If you cannot converge your eyes quickly and efficiently, you go into fight or flight. I'll get you out of my way. All right, survival. So she had primitive reflexes. Okay, but ocular motor was a huge key for her because she could not converge, and when an object came in close, her sympathetics kicked in. She started fighting. Survival. I mean, it's the most basic neurological function. Survive. Okay? That's what all these kids are trying to do. You're just looking for the triggers that push them over the edge. Okay? But these are the cues. Can they track objects? Can they converge? Can they diverge? Converge is the big one. Most kids cannot converge. That's why we do this. Okay? Fine motor, gross motor, and prims. I guarantee if you have gross motor, you have prims. Guarantee if you have fine motor, you definitely have gross motor. And if you have fine motor, you definitely. So it's a trickle-down effect, okay? But I always start here. If I start here and I find something, I know the rest of this is there, okay? Sometimes you gotta do a little bit of digging, but it's always there. So what happens if you didn't find any primitive reflexes? Go to gross motor. Okay, are there any deficiencies or alterations of perception there? I don't have any primitive reflexes, but I can't do a jumping jack. I can't hold a plank. Okay? You start working yourself down that order. If you're left hemispheric and you come in, you definitely cannot do any of these things. Okay? Guaranteed. Your right number developed and goes right to left. Okay? So all your autistic kiddos, you're gonna find all this. Okay, you already know. You just figure out which ones it is, and you're grading them. Okay. And if they are left, you most certainly have a motor reflex.
Can you say that one more time?
If they're left hemispheric, so they're having some sort of spectrum diagnosis, high percentage have a motor reflex. I mean, almost guaranteed, but can't promise so. You know, maybe a kid that squirts by that doesn't have it, but okay. And Alex he talked about auditory. When I do my motor reflex, I have my kids stand. They're facing the opposite direction, so they're not looking at me. And I wait. And I clap. It's almost blank. But you're not going to get a kid that does this. You're going to get a kid that does this. That's a positive. Doesn't look like a hard, it looks like a soft. Or they'll do this, or they'll close their eyes, and they'll come back. But they're doing something to try to recontrol their environment. Okay? So, left hemisphere autistic spectrum kiddos almost always have a moral reflex. That's a big one.
Could you real quick say what a hard moral sign versus a soft moral sign, or did that just
go
so that's a
right
hard,
there.
and then anything else?
You know, I mean, so perfect example. My grandmother. I thought this was hilarious. Now I don't think this is funny. But I can scare her at any moment, like any day, any time, within 30 seconds. Okay, it's just, and her arms would come out and she would scream. I realized I probably could have given her a heart attack or stroke. Okay, but I thought it was the most funny thing. But she had a very strong moral reflex, a very dynamic, you know, one that was not subtle at all. Okay, you will get those kiddos. Okay, but I mean, she was just. I was like, oh my God, how is this possible? You can scare her all the time within a few minutes. That's how heightened her moral reflex was. But you're not going to typically find that. Okay. There's some reasons why. I think there's just more education now, so parents are starting to prep a little bit earlier, right? Like my grandma didn't have any of that stuff. Lots of kids are on medication, so there's some sort of control in there. So, I think that's probably the main reason why you don't see it as quite demonstrative, but you will find it, and you will find it in adults. If they scare easily, they might have it. All right. Especially sound.
I'm sorry, I have another question. So, how do
You
you
stop
navigate?
with questions.
So if they have, if they still have more reflex, obviously it's not our job to correct it. But what it would, obviously we adjust, but like, is there an appropriate referral to somebody that can more appropriately, integrate that more reflex?
I don't refer out right away because why do primitive reflexes go away?
Change in the
Nervous
neurology.
system, right, but gross motor. Right, so proprioceptive input. What adjustments do they drive and proprioceptive input? Right through the brain, send into the cerebellum, and eventually right up to the prefrontal cortex, okay? I mean, they're doing MRIs of that stuff, MRIs and all that fun stuff. So if you want a referral for that, I'd go to probably an OT. But you're going to be hard pressed sometimes to find a good OT that can do that stuff. So I'm not bashing OTs. I have nothing against OTs. Yeah. Okay. So please don't misinterpret that as me bashing them, because I love them. They do amazing work. Okay. But you have to don't send them out if you haven't started adjusting them, because see if their brain will automatically start picking that stuff up, because it will. It wants to break that barrier. So give them a little bit of time. Yes.
Question about what's an OT?
Occupational therapists.
Okay.
You could say sometimes you have PTs that are really well versed in it too. I'd say OTs are probably more commonly versed in it, but yeah, occupational therapists.
Okay.
So primitive reflexes, motor movement, auditory, verbal, ocular, visual. Okay, so that's kind of another way of looking at this all. Okay, so motor movement. Okay. I know we like to be, or not we, but we're generically classified as musculoskeletal. Musculoskeletal is a massive portion of neurological development. Massive. It's not about pain, it's actually about function, and it plays a massive role in development. So the fact that we aren't pushing more research in how chiropractic impacts kids is a disservice, in my opinion. But you cannot suppress primitive reflexes if you don't have gross motor movement. Okay. So If you have ties, that restricts motion. Puts them in a flex position, a sympathetic state. Can alter motor movement, right? Big, plays a massive role. So, you know, lots of people are like, I don't get how it helps. Like, I mean, this is fundamentally the first year of life, is movement. Okay. If you were to, if you had a cat, you took the little kitten, and you were to wrap it up and hold it against you, then let it move for the first year of its life, what do you think would happen neurologically?
Basically shut down.
Say again?
It'd still be a baby, even if it was 1 years old.
Oh, okay. It actually would be blind.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Baby, you know, baby goes out and touches something and there's a response. That's how you learn. Okay. If you read into evolutionary biology, the reason we have prefrontal cortex is the reason that we can problem solve is because we can move efficiently. Because we can go through so many different planes of, we can climb trees, we can swim. So we have to problem solve. Okay. It's very, very important. So movement is fundamental. So, anybody heard of dysmetria of thought? Okay, 1, 2. Anybody? Okay. So dysmetria of thought is a process that they're finding where the individual cannot logically play out a scenario in their head or verbally. They cannot logically work through a problem. Fundamentally, where the hiccup is happening is they had poor motor movement development. That's pretty gnarly, huh? So, it is very, very important. Okay. So when you're looking for people, when you're looking at people, you know, I always do primitive reflexes. Start looking at motor movement. Then you start asking them auditory verbal questions. Can they repeat back stuff to you? That's important, right? Give them commands, see if they can follow. You want to start seeing people fall apart so fast. Oh my gosh. Adults, kids, they can do a jumping jack. Verbally give them commands, okay? See if they can do it. If they can't do it, we know they have an auditory verbal problem. Where's that going to play out?
Balance, communication.
Classroom. Jimmy, why don't you do your homework? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Okay? they honestly cannot process the information. I have a kiddo that I give him at least 30 seconds to process. I'll ask him a question, and he'll sit there. He'll start humming. The humming's to calm himself. And he'll sit there and he'll process what I said. Is this a single sentence? What's your favorite TV show? Got some massive auditory verbal problems. Massive. Okay, so you can start talking to people. When you have kids like this, do not give them a lot of verbal commands in the beginning. Okay? But if you start giving them verbal commands, start to look how they respond to this. This is huge. Start to look how your classmates respond to your verbal commands.
So do these fall after oculomotor?
Nope. Right there. That's not good. Eyes are the highest form of nervous system interpretation of the environment. Okay? So your eyes are king.
Yeah.
So everything
Well,
falls
the thing
under.
is, like, the last one was gross motor, and it went through into oculomotor. Where do these fall relative to it?
Okay, so yeah, good question. These are motor movements, but sorry, let me clarify. This is how you're developing from a processing your world. You start the world with primitive reflexes, then you start developing your world through motor movement.
Okay.
Then you start getting into auditory verbal, which is why, Dad? Why? Why do I have to do this, Dad? Why? If they skip that, it's a big sign. Why? 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 How many whys in 30 seconds? They start asking questions, okay? So that's key too. Are they, they're trying to learn their world through auditory verbal. They're trying to understand how to communicate, understand, and interpret the world, auditory verbal. And then it goes visual, okay? So, understanding this is huge though, because you have lots of kids, any kid with neurodevelopmental, they're failing this, okay? It's gonna happen. Then you need to see about the auditory verbal. Can they articulate? Can they understand commands? Okay? If you can't get that, Right, then we're looking back. Yeah, they're gonna have motor movement issues, 100%. But you can work your way back and forth through this list just by talking to people. Okay, so you can start talking to people, look where their eyes are going, look where they're directing, look where they're not looking at. Are they communicating with you through their eyes or not? These kids are not gonna look at you in the face most likely, okay? They're gonna look at the fan because it's moving. Okay? So, you can just start talking to people, looking at them, and understand where they're breaking down. We all break down somewhere in here. All of us, 100% of the population, okay? We all have some sort of hiccup in here. Except for me. Okay? So, start talking to people, start looking at them, see how they track. When they talk to you, do they look away and divert? What does that tell you? Deflection, right? From a visual standpoint. You see people start turning their head when they're trying to listen in. I turn my head to the left. That's my strong ear, so that's where I'm going to start listening to. So that all this chaos is going on. There's people yelling, my kids are screaming, punching each other, the TV's on. I'm going to start turning my head to the left because that's my strong point. So I'm going to start turning my eyes away from the stimulus. I'm going to turn my head to the left and try to bring them through my strong ear. Okay? And most of these kids will be jump back and forth. Okay? They are left ear, right eye, right hand, left leg. Their mind's all confused. Okay? It's a shit show sometimes. Okay. But it tells you a lot. What is a fundamental gross motor movement that a lot of kids skip or don't do well? Crawling, yes, huge. You'll ask parents, how do they crawl? They crawl just fine. They start crawling when they're 18 months. Okay. Holy shit. Okay. Their pediatrician said it's okay that they start crawling at 15 months. All right, okay, sure, they said that. Or I didn't notice anything. I had one mom said, she crawled fine. And then she sent me a video, 2 hours later, and she sent me a text. She's like, okay, I was wrong. Okay. So don't depend upon their memory, but ask them. It's an important question, okay? If they have ties, then they're probably not going to suck, so they're probably going to have a rooting reflex. Okay, so you're going to start talking to them. Do they have any sensitivities to the texture in their mouth, right? Okay, food sensitivities, that's a big one, right? So you can kind of just start asking questions and already understanding, okay, I think this. Okay? This is important because you have to understand the individual coming in, okay? So start talking to them, start understanding, start looking at their deflections, because they'll start telling you an immense amount of information, okay? But these two slides are how everybody should develop and will develop, and we all have hiccups somewhere, okay? Okay. All right, so at the very basic level, we should have symmetry of muscle tone and range of motion. If you're a baby, you should have that, okay? Going back to what Brittany's finding a kid with ties, and the reason why we're so passionate about this is maybe they can turn their head completely to the right, but they can't turn it completely to the left, okay? So that changes how they perceive their world, okay? But you also notice they have a tie, maybe they have more ties or tighter ties on the right versus the left. That's going to alter motor movement, how they perceive their environment. So this is very, very important. And we kind of talked a little bit about this. Dysmetry of movement leads to dysmetry of thought. Okay? You start using this on your significant other when they don't make sense. Okay, I think we have a motor movement issue. We need to address it, okay? You'll feel better. Okay? Yeah, and you'll start agreeing with me, okay? Don't do that. Okay. Cerebellum. What's the cerebellum involved with? Okay, balance, coordination of movement, coordination of thought, speech. All pretty important stuff, okay? Dr. Melillo. If you haven't read any of his books, you should, okay? But in one of his classes that I took, he talked about how he thought kids with autism had trouble speaking because the tongue and eyes are fine motor movements. So that's pretty far down the line, right? These kids can't do gross motor movements and they're stuck in the brainstem. Fine motors can be very difficult for them, okay? You add a tie on there where the tongue actually does not move very well, they cannot articulate well, You're just compounding a problem, okay? All right. So, you know, we come up to the brainstem, into the cerebellum, and then, you know, into the midbrain, and then we go right, left. So kind of all of this stuff that we talked about. So here's that dysmetry of thought. See how it's just downstream of dysmetry of movement, okay? So very, very important. I'm gonna skip some of this. What's my time right now?
11 o'clock.
What am I supposed to go to? Whatever. Okay, all right. I'm gonna try to get through enough of this, but okay. We're gonna skip the rest of that. We're good. Okay. I'll answer those questions, but I'm just gonna keep moving on. Okay. So when you start looking at kids, the first thing you want to look at, tone. Tone and symmetry. They don't have tone, they don't have symmetry, okay? Guaranteed. So where is it? In adults too, right? The most common cause of low back pain is loss of range of motion. And so, you know, that plays a role. They may have a galant reflex. Anybody familiar with the galant reflex? Stroking up the back. Okay. If you have a galant, what are the two most common symptoms you have? That's right, that's for adults. For kids? Any idea? Schools don't teach you guys. Okay, galant reflex. You find this very, very common in ADHD kiddos. Okay, it's a low lumbar. Okay, they move a lot. Their shirt touches them, the seat touches them, they move. It's a reflex. You have no control over it. They move. They move. They move. They move. So, movement, bedwetting. And I think a lot of kids that are having accidents too. All have galant. So they bedwet, have accidents, or inattention, you're gonna start looking at the lumbar. So it was interesting. I was in this Facebook group and it was I forget what they call themselves, but they were all like civilizations aren't real, sort of deal. We only follow science. And somebody adjusted a lumbar, and the kid stopped bending the way, and he's like, or the bed, and he's like, I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense. Civilizations are real. I'm like, galant reflex. Come on. Follow the science, bro. Okay, this is it. All right, if you have a galant, what are you gonna have? You're gonna have poor stability. It's in the lumbar. Okay, so tone, symmetry, primitive reflexes. So before you even touch the kiddo, you're looking at their tone and symmetry. Tone and symmetry right here. Okay, so look at their face, look at their posture. Test primitive reflexes. 99% of kiddos, 100% of kiddos with neurodevelopmental stuff have poor core stability. It's a gross motor, right? So make them do planks. Can you hold a plank? Start shaking. It's incredible. Anybody know the bird dog cross crawl exercise? Okay. I mean, doesn't matter their age. They got adults that can't do it too. They start going both ways. That's the thing about opposite. They literally have to plan it out. Okay. That's telling you a lot. You have an adult coming in, right? That's the people that can't do cross crawl are the people that go pick up a pencil and blow out their back. Why is that? Core stability, but when you move your right arm, your lower left back should fire. Okay. So you don't have good tone, you don't have good symmetry, your core's not firing, you're gonna hurt yourself. Okay. So we're gonna work our way through this. But if you're finding this, a lot of times you're not having to go further, right? You already know kind of fundamentally where they're at. So gross motor strength. I don't do a whole lot of squeeze tests or any of that stuff, but I'm just looking for can they do planks? Can they do jumping jacks? Can they do more than one jumping jack? So when I talk about stressing the nervous system a little bit, got Adam come in, giant arms, okay? All swole from lifting weights, okay? I asked Adam to give me 15 jumping jacks. About 10 in, he starts legging, okay? Can't quite get it up there. Yeah, it does sound like that, right? That's what I was saying. All right, so sometimes you have to test these kids. They will hide this stuff well sometimes, okay? So start digging. Your test should stress the nervous system. That's what the test is meant to do, okay? Don't do anything for just to check a box. That doesn't make any sense, okay? Then we can start talking about dominance, okay? Your autistic kiddos, all left hemisphere, okay? You'll start seeing that. Great with numbers, sometimes great with words, not great socially, emotional regulation, all that fun stuff. But you can start getting into this. I don't want to get into this too much because we can go down a bunch of rabbit holes, but you can start looking at this. This will sometimes impact, if you have dominance, you'll have a tone difference, okay? Guaranteed. You ever have anybody lay down and look at the back of their neck? Did you see a tone difference? Have them bring their head up just a little bit. Bring your head off the table a little bit. See what their muscles do. Completely flat on the right, all on the left. I mean, it happens all the time. I just have my kids bring their head up just with their face down, bring it up a little bit, complete asymmetry. Okay, so then if we have all this, then we definitely have this. And this is where lots of parents are coming in, okay? So this has all been missed, all been told to be normal, couldn't happen, and this is where kids are coming in. So emotional regulation, okay? So most likely all of this is in dysfunction or disarray, okay? Get a kiddo who spins. Anybody know anybody that would spin a lot? You spin?
No, I know somebody who.
Okay. No, that's good. It's for a friend. I know. Okay. I had a mom come in. She said and her daughter is autistic, but high functioning autistic. And she said every time I talk to her, she has to spin. Why? Process. She needs vestibular input to process. Everybody else said, okay, no problem. She just likes to spin. She's spinning to process her world. Definitely something wrong, okay? Unless that's completely normal, I don't know about it. All right. Lots of them have head tilts, okay? That's a big one. Also, vestibular related, okay? Somebody comes in, got some vestibular issues, right? Okay. But we're going core vestibular, core autonomic vestibular, okay? Does that make sense? That's the eyes, okay? A big one here. When I do, the H test, when you do this, have them converge and hold. This is passing, by the way. Go to a neurologist, that's passing. It's not passing, but to a neurologist, it's passing. Because their eyes can stay relatively symmetrical a little bit, but they have to close an eye. Sometimes they want to close one eye, sometimes they close both eyes. Start looking at that, okay? That's a very soft sign. Lots of your kids are going to fail it. Start paying attention, okay? If you cannot converge, what do you struggle with?
Life.
Life, all right. Nailed it, best answer yet. Okay, all right. Read it. Writing. Anything close in your face. So you start turning the paper or doing other things to accommodate, okay, to make life easier, okay? But a lot of the kids have convergence issues. And it's not overt, I cannot converge. You'll get this too. They'll start converging in one eye leg and they'll get there. Still a soft sign, but it's not a hard sign, so they're not going to be diagnosed with it, okay? So you have to understand that. But make them hold positions. Hold it out to the right. Hold it up. Hold it down. Stress the nervous system. See where they start failing. All of us fail somewhere, okay? So just figure out where it is. All right. So subluxation is sensory, it's just an altered sensory input, right? Which plays a massive role. It's involved in movement and interpretation of the world. So kiddos with neurodevelopmental stuff always have an alteration in their perceived world. That's why everything is bigger. That's why they scream when I touch them, okay? The pressure is so light, it does not cause literal pain, but to them, it's an alteration in their perception, okay? So they cannot interpret their world correctly, so they act out, or they struggle in different areas, okay? So that tells you the impact that you can have on a kiddo, okay? Massive. That kid tried to hang himself in my office. Yeah. He was so depressed, so outlandish, he would just punch his brother, and then I have these kites, we have these kites, right? He pulled out the little string, he could have never done it, right? But he wrapped it around his neck and was like, I'm gonna hang myself, and tried to jump off. It's like, all right. That's a fun story. Okay, we can get into that one a little bit later if you want to. Introception, what is introception?
Perception of self.
Perception of self. Schizophrenia. Okay. The only way you can understand the outside world is to understand yourself. If you can't understand yourself, then you don't understand the outside world, okay? Adjustments have been shown to impact the parts of the brain that are involved in introception, okay? So you're literally helping the person understand themselves, which helps them not only interpret, but interact with the world. That's massive, okay? This is why when BJ didn't know that this is what was happening, but when BJ had a mental health clinic and he started adjusting people and they started getting better, he was improving introception. He just didn't have the research back then to know all that, okay? So the problem is that DOs are doing this research and not us. So that makes me a little angry, but it's still research, right? So I will take that. But it's fundamentally important. Good introception is good for good mental health, okay? Yeah, so this is one of the studies on that. If you want it, here, if you want to take a picture of it, it's fine real quick. You don't have to. One or two people will.
Are we gonna be able to get a copy of this background?
Probably, yeah, I can probably send some adults, they can forward it up to you guys, I don't have a problem with that. Okay. Introception is impaired in children but not in adults. Okay, so it does change, right? Neurology does change, but it's impaired in kids, so that's telling you something fundamental. Do you have a question? Okay. All right. Okay, so moral. You can get this from talking to them. You can get this, sometimes you turn on a light and they jump, move, but you'll see something, okay? Most common soft sign I see is some sort of body jerk. Shrug shoulder, something like that usually, okay? Sometimes they close their eyes, but I can't generally see it because I'm on the back side of them, right? I don't want them to see anything coming. So this is a complete surprise. A kiddo with more, when you clap your hand, do something. There's some sort of movement, okay? So you're gonna find soft motor movements in people. They jump real easily, and sometimes it's asking you have adults come in, have you ever been to a haunted house? Yeah, you jump real easy? Oh my gosh, everything scares me. Okay, all right. Stand that way. Okay, all right, we got more reflex. These people are always sensitive to sound. They burn out very quickly with sound, okay? So classroom, concerts, all that's gonna burn them out really, really quickly. Start explaining that to a parent that your kiddo has an auditory processing because they have this reflex, and that verbal commands are very difficult for them and they can offset their, their neurology. Oh shit, that makes complete sense. Okay, why has nobody told me about this? I don't know, but this is what's happening. All right, SCNR, real common in adults. SCNR always leads to some really heavy upper cervical subluxations. Okay. 18R. So, okay. I clap my hand. The jump, move, them, do anything. Okay, whatever happens. I go right to SCNR. Arms out, eyes closed. I'm going to turn your head. Do not help me. Okay. Okay. Do it 3-4 times. Okay. The first time, if you have a kid that's semi-stable, you hold, right? You're holding, you're stressing that reflex. Hold. Stress it again. Go back, stress it again. It'll start happening when they go out, right? One of the two. They go up or they go out usually. I have some kids that just their arms just start straight falling, but usually it's out, which is kind of like more reflex, or they start going up and out, okay?
And it should just stay.
Should just stay level. Yeah. You get an adult who has integrated reflex, they just sit there, okay? Go to the other side. Does it respond or doesn't it respond? Same thing, okay? Sometimes, if they have a real severe diagnosis, you only get one side, you won't get the other side, but most likely they have both. The grading scale is from 0 to 4. Might get a 4 on the right and a 1 on the left, but there's some sort of variation in there, okay?
Hey, Dr. Bryan, do you want to set up some tables, and as you explain these, they can do it themselves as well?
Let's do that during the Q&A. I'll run it through a quick one, okay? All right, 18R, put your arms to your side, like this, close your eyes, and tip your head back. Boom. Have you been drinking? They may come back to the side. It's always either straight back or straight forward, okay? Versus Romberg's, which is cerebellum, okay? So we're gonna go to one side. They go to a side, not far from back, right? So what you're testing is the vestibular system with this, okay? Typically it's both, but sometimes you get somebody that just goes back and somebody that just goes forward, but they have some sort of balance issue, right? You can figure out where they're stressing out, but very important for eye tracking. So if this is positive, I know they're gonna have some eye tracking issues, just what fields are they in. They most certainly have some sort of reading problem. Okay? So that's partially related to the eyes. Okay, so there's some there, but you're gonna start, they're gonna come in, I have reading problems, I have this. You're gonna start saying, okay, I think that's positive, I think that's positive, right? You're just gonna start checking this off in your head as you go through it. But poor handwriting is another big one. So usually handwriting or reading is kind of the big ones that I see coming to my office, and this is always possible. This is very similar to the last one, so I'm gonna go jump into this one. Galant is one that's overlooked a lot. So when you're stroking the back, okay? And an infant is really easy. They just turn to a side, okay? You touch the back, you pick them up, they kind of turn to a side. And you get kids. So let me be clear on this. These three you can do standing, okay? These two you can do on all fours, okay? So sometimes you need to do that based off of age or stability or whatever else may be going on. But it's gonna look the same. I'll show that portion of the exam later. If I get them on, I'll do it standing. And then if I suspect that maybe, it's there, but I'm having trouble triggering it, I'll get on all fours. And I'll do this. I pull up the shirt and I stroke the back, okay? A lot of times you get just a little twitch. Sometimes you get a hard crank. Sometimes it's both sides, sometimes it's one side. But if they can't sit still, you're looking at this. They have bedwetting issues, you're definitely looking at this. And if they're having accidents or GI issues, you look at this too, okay? They generally have very poor lower motor movement. They struggle to march in place. When they do jumping jacks, they struggle to do this. Okay, they can't do planks. They have very minimal proprioception in the lumbar, okay? Adults generally hurt their backs, right? But this is also leading to poor posture, all this other stuff. So start looking at people. Start figuring out, I think that reflex is positive, go test it, okay? But this is one that no one tests, or very few people test it. You should test it, okay? All right, Bensky, I'm getting a lot of these. In my athletes, it's people that roll their ankles a lot. I have a couple kids that are athletes and they roll their ankles a lot. You strike the foot, toes don't flare properly. So look at this one, this is a big one. Alters their gait too. This is also common in tops. Why? Fascia. Whoever said that, yes. All right, a lot of times they have flat feet, by the way, okay? Palmer, or handwriting. This one I find kind of 50-50. This is, it can be there. This one can be a very subtle one. Sometimes, you think this, right? Sometimes like this. So I'm trying to pick up something, utensil, pencil, whatever, their hand's being triggered. Okay. Sometimes just picking up their phone. Sucking and rooting reflex. All right, kiddo only likes chicken nuggets. All right, okay. Big one, right? You can kind of figure out if they have this based off of what they like to chew. And so a lot of times this is retained because they have ties. Cannot properly move food through their mouth. They cannot properly suck or whatever they need to do, right? So they never had that option of integrating that. So they have this. This is big with, chewing. Lots of kids like to chew on things. Rooting reflex, okay? But they only like certain foods because taste does not matter. It's I can only chew this up, and therefore I will only eat that. Okay, so look at what they eat, see what textures they like, all that stuff. That'll get you some insight into this. You will get kids, they will lay face down and they will start eating the face paper. They have a rooting reflex, okay? People that suck their thumbs, probably a rooting reflex, okay? So, start looking at all this stuff, start figuring them out. If they have a reading reflex, their brain's not integrated appropriately, we're gonna have some other things further down the line, okay? But look at all this stuff, okay. Range of motion palpation. This is all very important because you're finding out tone and balance. You have some people, some kids that can go all the way to the right, can't go all the way to the left. Yes?
Does reading reflex manifest as like chewing on pencils when you grow up, or like I chew the crap out of my lip all the time?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
So yes, get that man some chiropractic care right now.
I got him.
Alright. Alright. Do you chew on pens and pencils? Alright. That might be it. There could be some other reasons for that, but yes. Great question. But movement is very important. You know, not only can they perform it passively or actively, but is it smooth? Okay, you get some kids, they start turning, they go like this. They have to speed through the last portion of it to get it there. That's not normal movement. Okay? That's abnormal. So a reflex is kicking in. What reflex do they probably have?
More.
STR. Yep. They probably have an upper cervical. Think upper cervical. So look at it. Is it smooth? Can they do it? The moment you start translating forward, you will lose range of motion. That's how the body works, right? Okay, so lots of kids are forward head carriage right now, cell phones, whatever. They're starting to lose range of motion. So is that the reason they've lost range of motion, or is it because they have a primitive reflex? And you know the difference, okay? But if their head's translating forward, they have poor body awareness, poor core tone, probably some primitive reflexes, okay?
Could that almost incite the primitive reflexes? Or that kind of
Good question.
reverse engineering it?
So, there's a demographic of individuals where they've seen a spike in primitive reflexes and they shouldn't happen. What are they?
Gotta be 8 to 9, 10-year-olds.
That's a good one. I like that one.
5 to 7, 5 to 6.
Dementia people. Head starts translating forward, primitive reflexes come back. So, they gotta figure out which one's a chicken egg there, but I mean, it's all plays a role, people. I mean, the body is telling you a lot. Just touching it, feeling it, looking at how it's moving, okay? All right, I do Romberg's. I want to know which side of the cerebellum is weak. We all have one. Some people are rock solid. Don't move. But a lot of people will go one side or the other, okay? If you pass Romberg's with your eyes open, but you fail it, eyes closed, what does that mean?
Cerebellum.
Doesn't mean cerebellum. It means you're heavily dependent upon your eyes to move through the world. You fatigue out visually very, very quickly. Your eyes are now overpowering, they're trying to overwork the cerebellum. Cerebellum should be able to do it. The eyes are now having to contribute information. You're going to burn out very quickly.
How long do you have them do Romberg's for?
Until they fail. You at some point you kind of figure out, okay, like this person's not moving. Yeah, they're souring. But you get people and you just wait like 3-4 seconds. They start doing it. They all do it. They all do it. Single leg. Very important. Not in the same world, but do they have stability on one side? Lots of people can do it on one, can't do it on the other. Tone, symmetry, all that fun stuff, okay? If you can't do both legs, then you definitely have some pelvic and core problems. I have a syndrome that never stabilizes. Why? Okay, all right, here we go. Finger nose, big one. Always tied to cerebellum. My favorite one with finger nose is when they poke themselves in the eye, okay? Hilarious. Why do you like, what the hell just happened? You know, there's open and then bam, right in the eye, like, okay. Do you think you passed or failed that? Did not pass, okay. Heel to toe. This is a big one. Can they, lots of kids walk around with a very wide base. Make it narrow, they fail. This is another variation of, we call this man's test, right? Everybody familiar with man's test? This is one, okay. So can they, on a narrow beam, stand? Okay, this is a good one. This is a variation of Romberg's. Okay, so I can maybe do this, but the moment I do this, then I lose some stability and I start falling, okay? So there's other tests that you can do to figure it out, but most of them, 98% of them cannot do heel to toe. Look how they do heel to toe. What are some things you think they would do with heel to toe? They're supposed to look at the wall and walk heel to toe. What do you think they do?
Look down.
Most of them look down. Or they start doing, I'm nailing this, aren't I? Yes, no, they just start swaying crazy, okay? It tells you a lot about the nervous system, okay? If they have to look down, they don't know where their feet are at, okay? Very, very important. And then bird dog, I like
Do you
that
do
one.
that? Sorry, real quick question with the heel to toe. Do you do shoes off, shoes on, both?
I usually keep shoes on just because that's how they live the majority of the world. But you can have them do both. So. Some other neurological tests, squat. You don't have most people do single because they can't. Okay. How can they, do they do a squat? Do they lean off to one side? That's a real common one. They just start falling off to a side. March in place. I actually do Fukuda's test. Anybody familiar with Fukuda? No? Okay, so. Arms out in front of you. I tell you, this is a zombie test, okay? Okay, march in place. Start marching. Usually have march for about 20 seconds. Close your eyes. Just start going off, just off, crazy. How did I get over here? Your brain's not working. Okay, that's why you're here to see me, okay? All right, let's tell you the side weakness for cerebellum. Okay, so Romberg's, finger to nose, Fukuda, it's all very important. I like the march in place because you're stressing the nervous system really quickly. So you have a march in place, eyes open, when we start closing the eyes. Sometimes it takes a few seconds, but they'll start failing. We all fail somewhere, okay? Jumping jack, push-ups, planks, and toe touch. What's toe touch indicate?
Fascial, like,
Tone. Tone. You can't touch your toes, it's tone. They literally cannot manipulate their pelvis to touch their toes. They don't have any body control of the lower hump. Okay, so it's telling something. They're probably gonna have a lot of pelvic subluxations repeatedly. Okay? So you can find areas that are gonna be highly subluxated repeatedly if you do a good neurological test. Alright. I'm not going to explain postural distortion. You just look at the person, where they're rotated, leaning, all that stuff. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. You guys probably know all that stuff. But it tells you tone, range of motion, all of that. Okay. I want to do two things real quick, and then we'll kind of do the last portion. Okay? Everybody familiar with HRV?
No.
Heart rate variability. Okay? Yep. Very, very important. Very, very important. Figure out how you can do it. We use the CLA, but there's other ways you can do it, okay? Bilateral pulse ox. Really important. Why is my kid's left hand 100, the right hand 97? Autonomic dysfunction, okay? So start looking at this stuff. There's things that you can do to test this. This is a big one. We do bilateral blood pressure a lot of times, okay? That's a big one too. They're off. Sometimes 20, 30 points. And then here's a fun one. Pupillary blowout. Okay, I don't have my phone on me. Eyes are entrance into the autonomics, okay? If our eyes don't work, our autonomic nervous system doesn't work, our pupils do what's called pupillary blowout, okay? What's the light? Stress. Oh, you guys are so smart. Okay, the last class of care. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I put a stress in my eye. What's the natural reaction? Strict. What if I start seeing this? Called pupillary blowout. I cannot handle the stress. Autonomic dysfunction. Do you think it's going to be bilateral on both sides? Maybe. Maybe not. So, you could have autonomic dysfunction on one portion of the body, but not the other. And mom come in. Ashley. Left pupil blows out, right does not. That's telling you something about the autonomics, okay? But sit there and you hold it. If it's nice and smooth, it opens up after about about 5 seconds, okay? Nice and smooth, that's a good sign, okay? But if it starts fluttering, and you'll see it, it blows right out. Or doesn't constrict, autonomic dysfunction, okay? This is an easy one you can do in clinic to see how that autonomic nervous system is functioning, okay? There are flashing lights in everybody's eyes. Don't tell them why you're doing it. All right. Okay. We talked a lot about all this stuff. The second thing I'm going to say, or the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to do all this stuff. Check everybody's oxygen. Why?
The nervous system needs oxygen.
If they are not getting better, if the subluxation continues, repeats, you're not seeing improvement, go fundamental physiology, okay? All my kids with COTS are mouth breathers. They have low oxygen. Okay, I was an asthma kiddo. Guess what my resting blood oxygen is? 96. Really hard for me to get above that, okay? So technically, I'm hypoxic at all times. All right? All kids should be 98 or higher. If they're not exercising, we all should be. So if they're not, you get a 45-year-old male that comes in the clinic, you check his oxygen, it's 96, 97, 95. They're a snorer, they don't get enough oxygen. Why are they not getting better? They can't heal, okay? All right, I'll be done with that, and we can proceed on to the next. Was that helpful? Okay, all right, awesome. Let's proceed on to the next portion.
Also got me worried.